All right, here we go. Crankshafts and their balance, okay? Why do you have a crank that in the middle, the weights are small, but they get bigger the further out you go? You ever realize that? Well, I'm going to attempt to explain why. And without getting into geometry and engineering, again, this is going to be layman's terms, and I'm going to make it as simple as I can. Okay? Now, you have a balance. Here's your piston. Here's your weight on the crankshaft. Okay? So, by this drawing, when the piston is at bottom dead center, the weight is at the top. So it balances out. Okay? You have a force here and a force here. However, for that to occur, it happens one time, a revolution. Let me move this back. Now, there's another balance effect here. The other balance effect, let's do this. The other effect is you have your cylinder, and the piston is now in the middle of the bore. It's maximum velocity, because that, remember, in the middle of the bore, the piston is traveling the fastest. Why is that? Well, because when you have a straight line and you put that line at an angle, it gets shorter, which means it's going to speed up the piston movement. So anytime the angled line goes too straight, it's going to speed things up. So let's look at this again. Here's your piston. Here's your connecting rod. And here's the crank pin. Okay? And what's happening at this moment is the weight's over here, and now the weight's over there. So, per one revolution, okay, for this instance, for one revolution, there's a balance that happens twice. So you can see there's a primary, we can call that, and a secondary, okay? This creates a rocking motion. Now, we can also look at, try and just shooting from the hip here, so let's look at it this way. Here is your piston there, your piston here. This is on a crossplane crank, okay? When you look at your engine on the engine stand, here's your connecting rods. This is what your engine looks like, okay? Now remember, when you're at the middle of the bore, these two are at the middle of the bore. Here's your pistons. They're at maximum velocity. So if you're at maximum velocity, there is no change in speed. However, you have a change in speed here and a change in speed here from the connecting rod. So now you have a motion like this, and now you have a motion like that. And here's your crankshaft. What happens, man, this is going a little too deep to what I want, but I guess I got to explain it. So here's your crankshaft. Now your crank wants to do this. It wants to rotate up and it wants to rotate down. So now you have something connected from end to end that wants to rock, okay? That right there is causing the crankshaft to move like this in your block. Now, this is all vertical. We're dealing with a 90-degree V8. So now you have a motion that's going like this and like that. Back it up again. Let's see. All right. So now you have a solid piece connected, and this one's pushing down, this one's pulling up. So now you have what's called a rocking couple. So here you have your rocking couple. Okay. So we know we have a good force pushing up here and a good force pushing down here. And here you have a little force and a little force there. You still have these big forces to deal with. The only way to get rid of that is making the weights on the outside bigger. You have to have big weights on the outside of your crankshaft. That's why these are smaller. And that's why these are almost non-existent. So now we got 90 degrees. This engine's tacking out. I mean, it's revving. That crankshaft is trying to swim in your block. So if it's trying to swim in your block, what do you think it's going to do to the main caps? Well, do we have room? Here's your main cap. Here's your bolt. Here's the bolt. It's going to move this. It's going to side thrust this. You ever take apart a race engine and you look at the main cap? Here, I'll go grab one. I got a whole box of them. All right. Here's your main cap. All right. This is one of the high nickel ones. So at any rate, this surface right here, you'll see like an etching, like someone took a DA to the surface, and it'll actually, what they call it brittling, okay? Because this main cap is clamped with such force, and it wants to do this in the block. It's forcing the crankshaft is forcing this main to walk, okay? It's doing this. So these surfaces are rubbing, okay? This was for clamping force and high RPM. Now, if you have this clamped to the block and this thing's trying to swim, it's going to crack right here. Okay? Because it's working back and forth. Okay? If the force was pushing down, okay? If the crank was pushing down instead of swimming in the block, what would happen is you would see it crack here. That makes sense? You would see the threads pull out. You'd see all kinds of damage that way. That is why the straight bolts are splayed. Okay, when you have a splayed bolt and this cap is trying to rock, it really has more stability. Not only are you getting leverage from the outer, you're getting leverage from the bolt extending into the block this way. You're also getting the clamping force. And if I'm not mistaken, now I've seen these, I've actually seen these where they cut down, they make a step here to where they'll actually fit in the 2-bolt main block, and it'll keep that from rocking like this. So that is why a crankshaft in a 90-degree V8 cross-plane crank it does not push straight down. Let me go grab a crank. Poor example, but you'll get the point. This crankshaft is a forged 4340 steel crank. This crank was turned in excess of 8,700 RPM. The weights were trimmed down. That's why I said it's a poor example. But you can see you have the two weights here, which are small, they're thinner than this outer one. This one's thicker and it's going to be bigger. Kind of wish I had the block for this, because this block had the brittling done to it. Wish I had a small block Chevy. I do have a small block Chevy cranks. I just don't have it available right now. So this is what you get. So this right here, it's still a good crank. You can still use it. It has a really good ring to it. It's also been rounded here, the way the crank spins. This one hasn't been touched. It's still straight, which we'll get into if you want. We can get into actually the spinning of the crank, and actually having a flat right here actually helps with the wind around it. But that's a different video. That's pretty much all I can. That's pretty much all I can say right now. I mean, like I said, I don't want to bore you guys with geometry and math and the technical jargon of engineering. So, I mean, I really don't want to bore you with that. So that's about as simple as I can explain it. But it goes a lot deeper when you get into, say, a flat plane crank. Okay, it gets rid of that rocking couple, and that's why they have smaller fillets at the ends. These counterweights here, they're just as thin as this. Okay, but this is a crossplane crank, so it's going to have that rocking couple. You want to get rid of the rocking couple? Get a flat plane. And if you really want to screw things up, get a Ford flat plane. That's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother ball game. Yeah, Ford really screwed the pooch on that one, but tonight, so let me go put this back on the shelf. Okay. Total race crank.